In ancient Rome, where marble temples glittered beside crowded markets and emperors spoke in measured tones, romance walked a perilous path. Love here was not just a feeling to cherish. It could become a fault line capable of shaking families, fortunes, and futures. The era didn't fear passion so much as the consequences that followed from it. The way a genuine connection might collide with law, custom, and the stubborn gears of power. Love in Rome did not always flow freely. It moved through rules about marriage, property, and allegiance. The word for love could carry different weights depending on who held the purse strings, who governed the house, and who could decide a husband's name for the lineage. Some unions were about alliance and wealth, the weaving together of two families to secure a city's future. Others were about affection, a private spark that stubbornly refused to vanish even as social currents tried to snuff it out. The tension between personal longing and public duty was a constant undertow in Roman life. Picture a forum at dawn, voices rising like a tide. A young woman named Ilia moves through the crowd with a guarded glance, her dowry tucked safely away, a thread of fear tugging at her sleeve. Ilia knows that the man she loves is not just a person to adore. He is a candidate for a contract that will bend the shape of her days. Marcus, the young soldier or perhaps a scholar from a distant province, stands on the other side of the square, his heart beating to the rhythm of a city that measures worth in coins and lineage. Their exchange is brief, a glance that tells them more than 1,000 words could. The danger isn't in the moment of attraction itself, but in what follows once the fever passes and the doors close. In this world, a kiss could become a rumor that travels faster than a messenger, slipping into the ears of a father, a guardian, a magistrate. The whispered tale could unseat reputations, topple plans that had been in place for years, and trigger a chain reaction that no one intended but everyone expected. In Rome, desire often carried the weight of consequence. To understand why romantic love could feel dangerous, you have to know the law and the language of family. In many homes, the father, or Paterfamilias, held almost absolute control. He could choose a marriage for his daughter to seal an alliance or to protect property, even when a wife had some measure of independence under sine manu marriage. The power of choice was tempered by the eyes of guardians, clients, and the ever-watchful public court of opinion. Love's flame could brighten a room, but the smoke it left behind could darken a future. Ilia's mother slides a letter into her palm, a careful script that speaks as much about prudence as it does about longing. Here is where the romance enters the legal arena: letters, gifts, even small acts of devotion could be seen as signals of a larger claim, an attempt to change the terms of marriage, to disrupt the balance of a household, to redraw a map of wealth and power. The romance here is not a movie scene, it is a negotiation, a calculation, and a risk that could echo far beyond two lovers. In Rome, fidelity had many faces. There was pudicitia, the virtue expected of a woman, a measure of modesty that whether through culture, law, or custom bound her actions in ways that a man's passions rarely faced. There was dignitas, the public sense of worth that could rise or fall with a single choice. And there was the fragile equilibrium of the manuscript of a life, written in prayers whispered at home and signed in contracts at the city's office. A romance could threaten all of it, not by neglecting virtue, but by redefining what counted as honor in a world where honor was a currency as real as gold. And yet love persisted, sometimes as a quiet refusal to yield to the easy script, sometimes as a bold, risky act. Consider a tale tucked into the margins of history: two young people, bound by a connection so undeniable that every polite distance between them felt like a test of endurance. They meet in a kitchen garden behind a villa, under the dim light of oil lamps, where the scent of herbs and the soft rustle of leaves become witnesses to a vow whispered more to the heart than to the room's ache for propriety. They know the consequences, but they choose one another anyway, not to cast off tradition, but to insist that a life worth living can include the courage to pursue love within the boundaries of what is allowed. The room is not always kind. A guardian might demand that a betrothal proceed, that the lovers present witnesses to a union that will seal a political alliance or stabilize a faction's power. A scandal in a city where gossip was a currency could ruin a reputation and draw the scorn of neighbors who measure loyalty by family name. A single misstep, an overheard confession, a hidden letter. A late-night meeting could spark investigations, accusations of impropriety, or even charges that delved into the realm of criminal behavior, adultery, stuprum. Acts that the law could treat as a crime rather than a confession of longing. And yet, even as danger cast its long shadow, the romance could become a teacher. The lovers learned to speak with care, to protect the other's honor even when their hearts demanded more. They found ways to show devotion that did not threaten a household or a political alliance, quiet acts of support. Access to a shared space where trust could grow. Conversations that stayed within the delicate lines drawn by the law and by love's own boundaries. They learned to listen to the voices of elders and the silent wisdom of the home, to translate longing into patience, and to discover that a lasting bond could be rooted in endurance as much as in flame. There is also a fierceness in this history. A stubborn insistence that love is worth defending even when the world wants you to surrender. The Romans did not always celebrate romance as a purely personal triumph. They celebrated it as a force that could reform a life, shape a legacy, and test the soul's capacity for resilience. When a couple chose to persevere through the maze of law and custom, they created a space where love could begin to heal the rifts left by duty and ambition. In these stories, you can hear the quiet tempo of a city that never stops moving. Merchants bargaining at the forum. A magistrate's scale tipping with weighty decisions. Soldiers marching past triumphal arches. And a handful of lovers who refuse to let fear erase their bond. They ask not just what it means to love, but what they ask how a heart can stay true when the world keeps changing the rules. The danger was not in romance alone, but in what romance demanded. A choice between an intimate truth and an impersonal law. It was the risk of becoming another name on a ledger, another line in a family tree, another stake in a political game. It was also the risk of becoming, in a very human way, more alive than the coppery, and that is where the romance meets its most intimate truth. Even in a culture that often believed love could be measured, love proved to be immeasurable in its impact. So why does this matter to us today? Because the danger of romantic love in ancient Rome reveals something about our own longing. It shows that love can be a fierce catalyst for growth, even when the path is marked by obstacles that seem insurmountable. It teaches us that perseverance, staying true to someone else while staying true to our own sense of integrity, can yield a different kind of happy ending. Not always a perfectly neat bow tied by fate, but a softly braided future that survives the storm of risk, rumor, and rule. And perhaps that is the enduring message: love was dangerous, yes, but it was also transformative. It could soften the stern outlines of duty, but it could also remind a person to hold fast to what they believed would endure beyond a single season of passion. The romance of Rome did not promise convenience. It offered a chance to prove that a life built with care, with courage, with respect for the other's humanity, could outlast fear and turn danger into a doorway. If you listen closely, you can hear the heartbeat of that ancient world in our own. The rules may differ, the costumes may change, and the streets may be cleaner or rougher here and now, but the core truth remains: to love is to risk, and when two people decide to walk toward one another despite the shadows of consequence, they illuminate a path that can guide us all toward a more compassionate understanding of romance, one that honors both freedom and responsibility. So the next time you think of love as a simple spark, remember Rome. Remember the lovers who dared to dream within walls that often tried to keep dreams out. Remember that danger and beauty can share the same breath, and that sometimes the bravest act of all is to choose love and to keep choosing it, day after day. In a world built for calculation and routine. In that choosing, there is a kind of triumph, the quiet, stubborn triumph of the heart that refuses to surrender. If you found yourself carried along by their courage, if you felt a spark that made the marble around you feel a little warmer, then perhaps you've witnessed something timeless. Love's insistence that even in the hardest places, there is room for growth, for healing, and for a future that can still surprise us with its sweetness.